Derrick Broze. Derrick is a journalist, an activist, a writer, a rapper, and an organizer. He's going to be speaking on navigating the future of AI, digital IDs, and digital money. He's a disruptor. We love disruptors in this community, don't we? Derrick? He's being disruptive. He's coming. Give it up for Derrick Broze. Need to get L1 on, please.
Testing. There we go. Hey, cool. Hey, how's everybody doing? Oh, come on. I know you were up late, but let's make a little more noise than that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, and I know that the village stage sound stretches out pretty far, actually, so we're going to see if we can call some more people in. You guys down for that? You might have heard mentioned just a moment ago, I do a lot of different things. I wear a few different hats. Today, my talk is mainly going to focus on my journalistic experience, my research, my investigations into things like digital identities, facial recognition, central bank digital currencies, AI, and how these tools, when combined and put in the hands of people who don't value freedom and privacy, can create a very scary world that's right in front of us and staring us in the face. So we're going to talk about all that fun stuff and, of course, solutions. But if I could, I'd like to perform a song for you first, if that's all right. So I perform music under the name 33. You can find me at 33ishere.com or at 33ishere on all platforms. I just released a new song today. We're not going to play that one, and I was going to have the music with it, but we don't have the track today. But I will be performing, speaking, and performing here Saturday, so come back. But I want to play for you guys a song. I'm going to do an a cappella version. It's called Reflection. And if you look it up on my album, it has the words of one of my biggest inspirations. Anybody ever heard of a man named John Trudell? He was a Native American activist, really brilliant guy, and huge inspiration to me. And when you go listen to the track, you'll hear his words sampled in there. So, all right, let's take a deep breath together, and then we're going to reflect together. I woke up this morning feeling I had something to say. I got doubts on my mind. It's time to let them fly away. It's time to unlearn poison and heal broken hearts. Go back to the end. It's time for a fresh start. This is the place we can atone for our sins. This is the place where our hero's journey begins. A space between love and hate where there's no escape from our fate. Rather than be irate, let's create, let's build the better world we know is possible. I've got no fear because we can overcome any obstacle. I stare all my demons in the face. I'll show you what's possible. I send love from my heart. I'm intuitive, not illogical. It's just that lately I've been searching for deeper meaning. I'm sick of drugs, booze, mindless sex, and criminal scheming. Feels like I should have more at this point in time. I'm talking knowledge, not money. I'm trying to feed my mind. Open up all three of my eyes and fly to the heavens. During my meditation, I see my life in chapters of 7. I connect to my inner child to heal my wounds. I recall those I've lost to dope, gone too soon. My life flashes before me, a collage of joy and pain. I recall the highs, the lows. I swear I'm going insane. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this journey. Spent too much time worried about things that don't concern me. No more time wasted, not chasing my dreams. I wake up every day knowing this world ain't what it seems. We gotta make our own path. We gotta find our own meaning. Cause we can't be sure. We might be dreaming. All I know is when I look in your eyes, I see myself. I'm just a reflection of your impression of my higher self. Could it be that our whole reason for being, our existence, is a lesson to teach us over and over until we get this? You are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Say it with me, Envision. You are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Shake off your chains, you are blind and now you see. Grandfather, help us remember where we come from. Grandmother, walk with us until the battle is won. Thank you guys. 33ishere.com. Check out my music. Now we're going to talk deep. You guys with me? A little more awake? All right, cool. Let's do that. So blessed to be back here at Envision. This is my 5th time speaking since 2018, and it's always a lovely place. Shout out to Juno, Hugh, and everybody here who's holding down the stage, the sound crew. And thank you, brother. Let's just give a round of applause to everybody here who's doing staff, volunteer, the builders, everybody who's made this possible for us to come here. I organize an event every January in Mexico called the Greater Reset. You guys should check it out. Come visit Morelia, Mexico. and it is less than a tenth of this size, and I know all the work and energy that goes into it, so mad respect to everybody here. So the talk is called Navigating the Future of AI, Digital Money, and Digital Identities. So we're going to touch on those 3 topics as well as a few more, but I want to give you guys some background so you know a little bit about me and why you should care what I'm saying on this topic. So my name is Derrick Broze. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I've been living in Mexico for the last 4 years, and I am an independent journalist. I've been doing that for about 15 years. I produced some documentaries. My main website's theconsciousresistance.com if you guys want to check it out. And my journalism, my activism, my public speaking, all of it has been focused on trying to empower people by educating ourselves about what's going on in the world, and then of course seeking real solutions, because, you know, let me start here. So the Conscious Resistance, that's my website, that's the quote-unquote movement, if you will, and I want to explain to you what that means. When I got into activism in 2009, 2010, I was just fresh out of prison. When I was 21, I got arrested, got sent to prison. I was addicted to crystal meth for about a year before that, fresh out of high school, was dealing with depression, suicide attempts, you know, going through it, and then I found drugs, and I thought that was the answer, and that led me to prison. And that was a healing journey. Getting locked up actually led me to meditation, it led me to prayer, it led me to starting to heal my trauma. And when I got out, October 2008, I was the happiest I'd ever been. I was now a felon, and I had all this stuff working against me, but I was also the happiest I'd ever been, probably the happiest for the first time ever in my life at 23 years old. And I also had a very open mind and an open heart at that time. And so getting out, and in the United States, and most of the world, there's, you know, the drug war, criminalizing people for choices they make. And even with things like crystal meth, I don't think people deserve to be locked up in cages. That cage didn't help me. I had to make a conscious choice to change my life. But nonetheless, I was given the space to go there and think, and I got out as a felon, having all these things against me, but in the happiest place I'd ever been, ready to learn. And in that space, I remembered that I'm an intelligent person, that I like to learn, I like to read, I like to think of solutions. And basically just started diving down the rabbit hole. 2009, read a book, watched a documentary, heard some people speak, and my life was never the same again. And I've been on that path now for 14 years. I'm an independent freelance journalist. I travel around, I report on different topics that the mainstream won't cover. I've written a few books. I produce a documentaries. I'm working on a 17-part documentary series called The Pyramid of Power. All these kind of fun things. But it started with going through that experience. And so when I got into activism, those first couple years, there was this interesting dichotomy where I was opening up spiritually and I was opening up as an activist. But my activist friends didn't seem interested in the spirituality, and my spiritual friends didn't seem interested in the activism. So I would go to the activists and I'd say, you know, we're on the street, we're holding signs, we're protesting, whatever, and I'd say, hey guys, you know, there's this meditation tonight, you guys want to go check it out? And like, what are you talking about, hippie? You know, or just, I'd say something like, hey, have you ever thought, maybe we're all God? Maybe, and just get into something deep, and they're like, man, what are you smoking? Like, they just weren't on that level. A lot of the activists I was meeting at that time were very logical, rational, and mainly kind of atheist people. Nothing wrong with being atheist, that was just what I was running into. Then I would go to my spiritual friends and I'd say, oh my God, did you guys hear about this latest police shooting or this latest injustice? And they'd say, don't talk about it, no bad vibes here. All good, just keep it chill, right? That kind of put your head in the sand. Anybody experienced that in the spiritual conscious community? I'm sure you have, because I experienced it for years. And so for the first couple years, I lived a dual life. I lived my activist life and I lived my spiritual life, going to meditation circles, you know, conscious raves, all the fun stuff. And then after a couple years, I had one of those nights where you're up watching YouTube videos till 4 in the morning. Anybody ever had one of those? And it was kind of like another shift happened, where all of a sudden it just became so clear to me that I couldn't live this double life anymore, and that to me, this fight for a more beautiful, more free, more just world, it involves both confronting physical institutions of power, be that government, corporations, and individual, but it also involves what I call the struggle against your internal tyrant, your doubts, your fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs that can hold you back, right? And when you combine the two of those things, that's what I call the conscious resistance. Does that make sense to you guys? So that's what I'm about. And so my work kind of focuses on that. But as far as this topic, and we're going to get into the spiritual and how this relates to where we're going, because I do think ultimately everything we're facing on this planet and all the different scary things that could be in our future are the results of a spiritual battle that is taking place, in my view at least. So when I started to get into journalism in Houston, I was just an activist with a camera, starting to ask questions to the cops and to the mayor, and getting pushed out of the room and told I'm not a real journalist, and I had to fight for everything I could get to go out to those press conferences. One time I went to the press conference and I confronted the Houston Police Department officer about the HPD using what are known as stingrays, stingray cell site simulators. This basically is a tool that they can drive around and grab all the text messages and images from your phone. So let's imagine this group here, they thought one of us was a criminal and they knew our phone number and they were just trying to ping this. It doesn't triangulate to one phone, it gathers everything in that area, and then they claim they get rid of it, right? So I went down that rabbit hole, and that started me just to investigate the police, and before I knew it, a Houston Police Department officer leaked me some images showing Houston police officers holding a training session about me. And I was told that I had a criminal intelligence officer assigned to me that was surveilling me. So I figured if I'm under surveillance, I should probably do some research and really figure out what does that mean. And so I just started focusing my journalism on digital surveillance tools, facial recognition, digital identities, gate detection, heat detection. I mean, there's so many tools that are available to various governments and police departments around the world, especially the more wealthy ones. And most of this is coming out of tools from the war on terror and things like that. So I started investigating this, and this has become the focus of my work. And in 2020, I published a book called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. I published it January 2020, right before COVID and all that stuff happened, so it was a really interesting time. And many of the things I kind of was warning about in this book happened in the last couple of years. You can download the book for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. We also have copies over there if you want to pick some up. This book is part warning, part philosophy, and mostly, as the name suggests, a guide on how to navigate this world that we're coming into. And let me describe this world. So, in the United States, and this could be applicable most other places, because I saw it as we were traveling here, even in El Salvador. In the United States, in the next 2 years, you will not be able to fly without submitting to facial recognition cameras. You've probably already seen the little tablets when you fly internationally. By the way, they're not mandatory. Do not step right in front of that thing. Step to the side of it and tell them you don't want to do that, and they won't give you any hassle. They'll just take your passport. But they're trying to acclimate us to get us used to it already. And you might say, well, who cares? I mean, it's quicker, Derrick. I'd rather do that than have to stop and show my passport, right? And as you're going to hear today, one of the themes is that this world that we're being told is going to be futuristic and utopian and all beautiful. It's being sold to us under the guise of convenience and entertainment. Because why would you ever want to have to stop and talk to a human if you can walk into the store and the store scans your face, automatically connects that to your bank account, then when you grab the groceries, you just walk out and it deducts it from your bank account. It's so easy. It's so simple, right? But who's holding that data? How long is it being kept? Where is it being used? Sometimes it's not so nefarious. It's just people trying to make money off you, selling you ads. That, all the algorithms on your Instagram feeds are based on what you look at, and companies that are trying to sell you shit based on what they think you like. That's the least of our worries, but that's still problematic. Much of this world is going to be dependent on our biometrics. Does everybody understand biometrics? Like bio, it's your life. Like, so for example, this is called your face print. When they scan your face, they collect this face print. And there's a company called Clearview AI in the United States. They're one of they have the world's largest, besides governments, database of face prints, because there's currently no laws that restrict them or limit them or regulate them on. And in the United States, there's only one state that has any kind of law on protecting our face prints. So companies like Clearview have over 1 billion faces, and guess what? We gave it to them. We put it on our selfies. We put it all on social media. So what do? They created a tool that would just scan and collect data from social media and plug it into their database. And before you know it, they have 1 billion faces from all of us around the world. And they sell this access to this database to the FBI, to governments, and pretty much anybody who can afford it. So, you could argue it's being used to catch bad guys or whatever, but at the end of the day, we have no control over how they're going to use that data and where it's going. So your biometrics would be your face print, it would be your fingerprints, your DNA, your genetics. That's another sort of worrisome part about the future we're moving into, how our genetics could be used against us. So I've been researching things like facial recognition. Also, is anybody familiar with the term social credit scores? Or heard of this in the last few years? Good. There's more hands up this year than last year. So a social credit score is, as it sounds, it is we're all familiar with a credit score, right? You have a credit card, and if you don't pay your bills, your score goes down. If you pay your bills on time and all that stuff, you have good credit rating. And these folks have built this world around us that if you don't, like for example, I don't have a credit card, I don't use credit cards, I have no credit history. So in their world, I can't quite get a house, I can't get a loan or whatever. but I'd rather kind of be free from that system either way. But you take that idea of a credit score based on your financial history. A social credit score is more about your social interactions, right? So let's say this gentleman here is one of those conspiracy theorists that likes to post crazy things on the internet. Well, his score is going to go down because he's posting things that are not, official dogma of whatever nation he lives in, right? So his score starts to go down. And maybe you're like, who cares? They can give me a number, take it to 0. I don't care, right? But then you realize if the score goes too low, you're no longer applicable for your next promotion because you have to have at least an 850, and you've only got a 750 because you said that thing about whatever on the internet and somebody didn't like it. Next thing you know, your score goes down. And maybe you want to get a loan for that house, or you want to go on vacation, but unfortunately your score is too low. You didn't qualify this year, maybe next year. If you take your recycling out on time, you pay your bills on time. If you're a good citizen, you can get your score back up, and you can get those things that we used to call rights. You can get your privileges back, right? This is happening. This is happening in parts of China. Also in India, they have a system called the Aadhaar system, where they went around it took quite some years, but they scanned the faces and the retina of every 1 billion plus Indians and got them on the system. And, there's alleged benefits to trying to get us to become in digital systems and digital IDs. So for example, I mentioned in Mexico, well, in Mexico where we live, cash is pretty much used everywhere. And a lot of people work under the table. They're not paying taxes on that, and I think good for them. They should keep all the money they can earn for themselves and their family. If things go digital, though, it would be a lot easier to track where everybody's money's at, what they're spending it on. And let's say this guy who's posting bad things on the internet, he's also buying things that we don't like. And since we have track of his money, and in fact, we moved into a world where not only does he have a digital ID that traces everywhere he goes, now we're using central bank digital currencies. Anybody heard that term more recently? If you haven't yet, or CBDCs, you will hear about it in the next 6 months to a year, because over 140 nations in this world have agreed to adopt central bank digital currencies, which basically just means programmable government money. So he's posting bad things on the internet. His score is going to go down. He's going to lose some job promotions. We have a digital identity on him, so we can tell everywhere he goes anyways. But he went to this one shop, and he bought some stuff that, it's frowned upon in our society, and of course that can change. So that brings his score down as well. And then in fact, he keeps going to that store. So after a while, the government's like, you know what? The best way to teach him a lesson, let's just turn off his account. Because he's got a digital wallet controlled by the government, and they can see everything he's doing. And if he's making purchases they don't like, they can turn him off. This has already been happening in China, so there was some protests, pro-democracy protests happening in Hong Kong and other places, and the internet is already tightly controlled over there. They have, the Great Firewall of China, but activists are able to get around it using VPNs and stuff, and so they still do organize very bravely in a place that's kind of dangerous to do so. They were organizing these protests. It was during COVID because China had some of the worst, most authoritarian COVID policies called a zero COVID policy, which caused a lot of harm, literally welding people into their houses and all kinds of crazy shit. And so the activists started protesting that. Well, they had to promote it, right? So they put it out on social media, and before you know it, the government was able to identify who were the organizers, and before they could get to the bus station to make it to the protest, they turned off their IDs. So then, and in China, you have to have the ID to do anything, to get into the building, to get into the bus, to go anywhere. Oh, I'm sorry, your ID is not accepted here. Every one of the activists was then just basically shut out, so they effectively couldn't organize. Do you guys see the picture that I'm painting here? But again, you're going to hear this sold to you because it's convenient. How many of you use Face ID on your phone right now? No shame, I'm just like, let's just be real, right? So I encourage you, my book and my work is about trying to encourage people. I'm not anti-technology, let me make that clear, because in case anybody's getting that idea. I use computers every day for my work. That's my camera right there. I love digital technology for what it can provide, but I also think, we have to, I'm 39 myself, so I remember before the internet. I remember the early days of the internet in junior high and stuff like that. I remember life before. But what about my 10-year-old niece? She has no understanding of what life was before. And if us, as those who do remember life before, don't try to plant the seed like I tried to do in that young mind and say, hey, baby, think about what it would be like if you're always on that thing, if you're always plugged in, and I try to just plant seeds where I can, because her awareness, she can't even imagine a time where the internet wasn't a thing, that you could just pull out a phone and stare at it, right? We're moving into a world very quickly that we essentially, for the most part, have very little control over. I don't know that we can stop the race towards this world, what I call technocracy, and I'm going to explain that in a moment, I'll define that. But this world where technology is used to control and limit the movements, the actions of human beings. And this is where it would allow some bad folks, whether that's the big tech CEOs or governments, to be the social engineers of society. Because that situation I just described, nobody held a gun to this man's head, but you could very quickly make him change his behavior. If you tweak his score, you turn off his thing, before you know it, most people are going to comply. And in fact, let me add one more layer to that. That social credit score thing we just described, the way it also works in China. So I'm his best buddy, and we hang out all the time. His score's going down, and I come visit him for our weekly hangout. I go home, and all of a sudden my scores drop 50 points. So I come back and visit him one more time, I lose another 50 points. Before you know it, I'm like, hey bro, you know I love you, man, but like, I got a job promotion coming up, I can't afford to lose any more points. So I'll see you in 6 months or so, maybe, we'll see how things go. That is already happening. That is using technology to engineer results that you might prefer. To, again, without even a heavy hand that most people would recognize, subtly programming you to what you can say, where you can go, what you can buy, what is acceptable. And once we embrace that system, there's going to be very difficult to go back. Now, I'm speaking to you as somebody that doesn't have a driver's license. I have not had a relationship with the tax agency of my home country ever. I don't have a cell phone. I use Miriam's phone sometimes. What else is there? I just try to stay out of their systems as much as possible. And some of this was sort of just, it naturally happened to me. I haven't used a bank account since 2018. Since 2008. And I try to be on the edges to shout, hey guys, there's something scary up ahead, but I think there might be solutions. And that's what we're going to get into, the solutions. But I want to keep painting a picture of this world here. We've talked about social credit scores, digital identities. Of course, everything that I described wouldn't be possible without facial recognition, right? Like, for example, China has one of the most advanced facial recognition systems in the world. They can find anybody in the country. Last I saw, there was a report 5 years ago, within 7 minutes. Like, as soon as that system plugs your face into it, they can locate you anywhere in the country within 7 minutes. And they tested it out. They were bragging about how effective it is. I'm sure it's gotten better since then. So these type of systems where digital IDs track, everything you do, you're only allowed in certain places. It's interesting when I think about this digital ID thing, it kind of reminds me of a situation from a couple years ago. Identities, you couldn't go into certain places if you didn't have this thing. What were they called? Vaccine passports? Yeah, something like that. I don't know. But anyways, that world is being pushed in front of us right now. And there are many people. For example, let me give you a real world example. Literally yesterday while I was getting ready for my talk, I saw that the European Union just voted to move forward with their digital IDs for movement between all borders. They're going to implement the system by the end of this year. So that means everybody who is a citizen of a European Union nation will have to get a digital identity to be able to move between borders by the end of this year. And as I said earlier, the US is testing facial recognition in all of the international airports right now, but it's only a matter of time before it becomes in all of the terminals. So it's going to be very difficult to avoid these things, especially if you are a person who is very plugged into these systems already. I'm somebody who's trying to kind of navigate and dodge and avoid where I can, and even that is very difficult. And it's only going to get more difficult, right? I mean, for example, how many of you feel like if you lost your cell phone right now, you would probably lose access to a lot of your life? Not only just the sentimental stuff, but things that really matter. Bank accounts, all kinds of stuff, right? So think about the amount of power that's already on this one device. I like to use the phrase, one app to rule them all. Because in China, they have what's called WeChat. WeChat is the app. Facebook is illegal. The other ones are illegal. Again, people still find their way on using VPNs. But for the most part, those social networks are not allowed because they don't comply with China's censorship standards. So WeChat is the app that you pay your bills with. You have a bank account through it, your digital identity, your social credit score, your social media, your messaging with friends. It's everything, all in one. And again, think about the power of giving the government or a corporation that much access to your data. Because every time you're clicking, yes, you approve the terms of service, you are giving them access to your information. And every time you scan a cashless thing like this, let's think about Envision, unfortunately, as a sort of experiment in an early stage smart city. Every time you're checking in, there's a record of it. Every purchase you're making with this wristband, there's a record of it. Personally, I'm not using it. I think it's a mistake to go towards cashless. I was saying this earlier, how in Mexico and a lot of Latin America, cash is king and cash is needed, right? And if you erase that under the premise of, we need to get these people into the banking system and help them become real people, it's sort of buying to this premise, like, for example, because I don't have a government ID or because I don't have a bank account, I must not exist or something. But if you go into that matrix, like, for example, I went back to Houston last year and I tried to rent an apartment. Try renting an apartment with no tax history, with, I get paid in crypto and sometimes in cash and other things. I'm like, I can show you, blockchain history. I can show you some things, but in their mind, like, I don't have a credit score. I don't have a government ID. I don't have a tax history. I might as well not exist according to them. And that's because we have all been programmed since birth. If a person doesn't have these official documents, oh, they must not be a legit person. They're not an adult. They're not professional. All these sorts of like subtle ways that they program us to think being in the system is the answer. And I believe the answer is for us to create our own systems, to opt out of their technocratic system and to build something new.
So this
The system's coming up pretty quick. And my work in my book asks you guys to just reframe and rethink our relationship with technology. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life or to say, hey, you need to embrace my lifestyle and this is the only way to happiness or freedom or anything like that. But I am here to say we really ought to rethink the way we embrace technology without a second thought. Just, oh yeah, new tool. Let me just put it on my face, strap it to my face, and put in these Bluetooth headphones that are radiating the side of my ears and potentially could give me brain tumors. We don't stop and think and look into this. Instead, we assume, well, if it's on the shelf, surely somebody tested it, the government gave it. They wouldn't put this out here if it was bad for us, right? They wouldn't possibly put things in front of us with an ulterior motive, would they? No, they're just selling us goods because we all love digital technology. We need to rethink the way we embrace these technologies. In fact, I had a really good experience on the shuttle up here. Is Mimi here? I talked to Mimi on the way up here. Okay, it's like, you're one of the workshop presenters, right? And I was like, yeah, and I told her this story I'm telling you guys now, and she was like, shut up. I use Face ID for everything. And by the end of our conversation, she was like, I'm deleting all my apps. But I was telling her, I was like, look, I'm not telling you what to do, but think about that. Apple has your face print, and they can sell it to whoever, and if you're using it for other apps, if you haven't read those terms of service, more than likely you're giving them access to your messages, your microphone. And the other thing is, the more smart shit we surround ourselves with, you should replace the word smart with surveillance. Your smart TVs, they have microphones that can be remotely activated, not just by the companies, but if anybody's ever heard of somebody called WikiLeaks, Free Julian Assange, you can look up something called Vault 7, and you can see how the CIA was hacked and how we now know they have tools where they can, even if you turn off the microphone and it says off, they can remotely turn it back on. Anything smart can be hacked by just some random hacker, could be listed into by the corporation, like your Amazon Echo, your Alexa, all the stuff that you might have in your homes. They are not just turning on when you say their names. They're listening constantly. And this has been proven in stories time and time again where like a couple's arguing and somehow their families get text messages of their voice recordings and somehow it started recording. They didn't realize it was recording. My point is the more we surround ourselves with these tools, we are kind of putting ourselves in this digital prison. We're allowing it to happen to us. But the good thing is that means we have so much power over this situation. We can decide right now, for example, you guys could decide to write down nomooregoogle.com and go to that website and look up alternatives to everything you're doing with Google right now and stop using that. If any of you guys are in companies, businesses, or even Envision, you could embrace cryptpad.fr and use everything you do with Google and these big tech companies, but on a company that actually has encryption and respects your privacy. You could go to privacytools.io and you could look up all the different alternative options that are available to you for email, for web hosting, for all these other tools. They're out there, but you're not going to hear about them at the local cell phone store, the local electronics store. You have to actually do the research. You could go to abovephone.com, which is my buddy's company, who sells privacy-based de-Google phones that are loaded. There's no Google Maps on there, or Apple Maps. It's loaded with organic maps. It's loaded with alternatives to everything you're doing, but that don't steal your data, that don't take your stuff and sell you to a corporation. We need to learn that, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, data is the new oil, that sort of thing. It's because these companies realize that everything we're doing on the online world is producing data, and that data isn't just meaningless. It tells them a lot about us, and then it tells them how to sell shit to us. It tells them, what our patterns are. And for governments, it gives them a lot of information about their people and maybe how to, as I said, socially engineer the public's behavior. So we have to, or at least I'm encouraging you to rethink how we embrace these different technologies. Do you need that brand new app every time it comes out? Do you need the latest phone? There's that side of it, but then also there's this sort of, like I said, I think this is spiritual as well. I mean, I've been taught in our indigenous traditions, like when we go into ceremony, no cell phones, no electronics are allowed because many of our traditions believe this interferes with connection to spirit. So if that's something that applies to you, that's another angle to think about. But the other thing is just, again, the sort of blindly just, the new tool comes out, I'm going to take it. And then also, how many times do you take your cell phones or your devices with you when it's totally unnecessary? You're going on a walk 10 minutes from your house, and it's like, we can't handle 10 minutes of not being bugged by notifications. Or, you know, again, like I said, I remember the 90s where you would leave a voicemail or the answering machine, and yeah, maybe you'd get back to them a couple days later. And now it tells you, they read my message. Why haven't they responded? What's going on here? And then we all feel, I mean, I feel it too. Like I have to step away because I feel like I can feel it creeping up in me and like my stress level, I'm clenching my jaw and shit. I'm just like, okay, I got to go outside. I got to get away from this. That's why I don't have a cell phone, because I'm already so plugged in with my work. I want to walk around and not have the thing here and keep checking it and repeatedly checking my email all day and stuff like that. I want to have some time to be present with other people. So thinking about it in terms of surveillance, privacy, mental health. I saw this really, really cool tweet the other day from Edward Snowden where it was a picture of his son staring at the computer or the smartphone for the first time, and he said something to the effect of, I've waited this long to give him the smartphone. He's like, I'm terrified. This is the first time I've seen my son with the trance. You know, you guys know what I'm talking about, like the phone trance. And he's like, I'm really worried whether or not, I don't know if we as humanity are evolved or ready for this. You know, he was describing his own experience, how he's been glued to a computer most of his life, and he knows what it's like as an adult to fight that, and like what I'm describing. Now imagine we're just putting these hands in the kids' hands because you're busy, and I get it. Like I have a brother and sister, and they're busy. It's like, okay, just take the phone, leave us alone, right? But what is that doing to their brains? There's a book called Generation Blue Light that talks about not only the exposure to the blue light, but also, I mean, for those of you who do the reels and the shorts and all that shit, I mean, it's fucking up your attention span. But what do you think it's going to do to a little kid that doesn't have 10 years to develop an attention span before that starts happening? Most of us here, we got to late adulthood, 20s or something, before this came around here. But for those of you who are younger or those who are the youngest generations that are coming up, again, they have no memory of what's like before that. What is that going to do to their brains? Well, we're in the middle of the experiment, so we'll find out. And that's what I mean. Like, we kind of assume, no, they wouldn't allow these things on the market if they could have negative impacts to us, right? But at the end of the day, we have to take personal responsibility. I think it is our job as powerful, beautiful, free people. You guys are powerful, you're beautiful, you're free, right? Right? Oh, that's not enough. Say it with me. I am powerful. I am beautiful. I am free. Yeah, all right, okay. I actually had notes, so maybe I should look at these. I think we're doing good. Okay, can I perform another a cappella song, take a break, just breathe for a moment? Okay, cool. Don't forget where we were at. We were just about to get solutions. Okay, that's all we need to focus on. How long do I have, by the way? Does anybody have time check? 30 more minutes? Perfect, okay. So this is the second half of a song called Awakening. This is the last song on my album Transmutation that I put out last year. And for those who were here earlier, I shared about my journey with depression, addiction, going to prison, and turning my life around. My album Transmutation basically tells that story of like being deep in drugs and that crazy world, and then going to prison and waking up. So this is the final song on the album, the final verse on the final song on the album that kind of shows where we're headed. I've never felt more powerful than when I question the power. So full of themselves, lost in arrogance, but in reality, the cowards. If you're searching for the devil, look no further than your government. The politicians are the puppets, but don't forget the false covenants. The false prophets, mega churches making profits, the devil's loving it. They lie to your face and you take it. Do you prefer to be ruled? Wolves in sheep clothing, they got you fooled. They pull the wool over your eyes, feed your lies while they strategize and propagandize. Come on, my brothers and sisters, this is our moment to rise. They never saw us coming, but we are the antidote to their lies. We strive for truth and liberty. We strive to be better. Humanity's made mistakes. We're not perfect, but this ain't forever. I know we're destined to build a better world we know is possible, but it's gonna take struggle and making ourselves responsible for our choices and actions. We have the power to manifest that which we know we deserve. We are humanity at its best. Water is life, huh? Okay, so we hit on... Okay, let's get into AI a little bit. And then we'll get to the solutions. Because, like I said earlier, and I'll just add this caveat again in case somebody's else like, this guy just hates technology. I don't hate technology. But again, we need to rethink and kind of have some conversations before we just run into it. Last year here on this stage, there was some really beautiful conversations that I think might be happening this year about AI And specifically, the conversation was about AI-generated art versus, human hand-created art and stuff like that. And just, is it real art and this and that? I think there's a lot of interesting conversations. Even in my world as a journalist, there are journalists who are starting to assist their articles with AI, and it's going to be difficult for people to tell. Personally, I've chosen not to embrace it. I haven't used any of the various ChatGPT or others out there. And if you've been paying attention to any of the news, like for example, with the recent release of Gemini, these tools are definitely not perfect. They're still very flawed. And of course, it all depends on the data set that these AI are being fed. So let's just give one example. Let's say somebody created an AI chatbot that was fed the Bible. Well, then obviously that's going to be the data set that it has. You're going to ask it questions and it's going to give you biblical answers. But let's say that the data set was created with the assistance of a government that said, these topics over here, those are conspiracies. Those are off the table. Anytime anybody asks questions about those, these are the answers you're going to give them, right? And I've seen more and more people embracing ChatGPT and others, sort of like we all have embraced search engines, to the point that Google has become a verb. There are other search engines besides Google that don't track you and actually don't hide results as well. Because if you didn't realize that, guys, if you're just using the YouTube or Google search bar, they are not showing you everything that exists out there. They're showing you a very select taste of what's out there, and usually it's by the approved authorities. So if that's where your faith's at, then continue that. If you want to see what else is out there, try presearch.com, try CRX, there's a few others. DuckDuckGo was cool, but they started censoring during COVID. So my point here is, though, just like people embraced Google and we just, oh yeah, Google it, just Google it, it's become part of our language. That corporation must be like, heck yeah, we literally got it inserted into the English language. Not even English, just all over the world. Everybody uses that term. Like as a company, that's got to be like the best success ever. People have now embraced your name as a verb to do something. They don't even say search it, check a search engine. We just say Google it, and everybody knows what you mean. That's pretty scary to think about that. And it is what it is, but we have a choice. Like I just said in my song, it's time for us to take personal responsibility for our actions. You can choose from this moment, if you wanted to look up one of the alternative search engines at nomoregoogle.com and change your default search engine from Google today. And just that simple step, you would be taking one step away from the matrix. There's still many more steps to go, but that's what I mean. There are solutions available to us. AI is going to be just like that, but I think a bit worse. Imagine if people think that, as they seem to think, that these AI bots are infallible and that what they say is gospel. Well, as I said earlier, it all depends on the data set that these large language models are being fed. So if you, as a young kid, like say, I'll go back to my nieces and nephews who are growing up in this world, they're going to grow up probably with their own personal AI assistant if things go the way that they seem to be. And I imagine, just like you say, hey, Echo, play this song, or Echo, what year was World War II? You assume you're going to get the right answer. And the more people become dependent on those things and on these AI bots to give them the truth of the world, that's a very dangerous place to be. The moment, like think about this, when was the last time, besides your own neighborhood, and maybe even you don't do that because it's just the habit, when was the last time you drove around without Google Maps on? Been a while? Some of you, if you maybe have, most people using it everywhere they go, even when you realize that, wait, I'm in my own neighborhood. I probably could have turned this off like 20 minutes ago, but it's just habit or it stays on. Maybe you never even turn off your location. Maybe your phone doesn't let you turn off location. That's why you should check out the Above phone and others, because there are tools available. So think about that. If you're like the way that we've already become dependent on, not even just Google Maps, but other navigators where it tells you to go left, you take a left. You don't even really think about it. But how many times have you been in a situation where you actually know the area and you realize the map is giving you a stupid way to go? You're like, no, this isn't. I can go this way and it'll be faster. But if you don't have that human thought, you just depend on the map to take you where you want to go. And now think about that world I was describing earlier with social credit scores, with facial recognition, with all this information about us, right? What if, here's one positive use case of that. Let's say he's an old friend I haven't seen in 20 years, and we're all on the digital ID system, we're all plugged in, and the computer tells me, hey, your buddy from 20 years ago, he happens to be at a coffee shop on the way to your work today, and you actually have 10 minutes to stop. If you pull over here, you can connect with an old friend and then still make it to work on time. I mean, that would be like, those things are going to be happening very soon here. That looks like amazing, like, oh wow, I would have never seen you, how convenient, right? But the more time goes on and the more I start depending on that as it tells me to go this way instead of go that way. Or let's imagine the reverse, like I described earlier with the Chinese activists being locked out of their cards being turned off so they couldn't travel to the buses to get to the protest. Imagine the system knows me and him are really powerful activist organizers, and we've been kicking ass lately, but we haven't seen each other a little bit. And the same situation. It could tell me to go one way where I might run into you, but it could also make sure I go a totally different way to make sure we never cross paths. But if I'm just depending on these systems and never giving it a second thought, before I know it, I've handed over my humanity, I've handed over my own thinking, and I think some of us have already done that in some ways, and that's why I'm here to ask us to rethink and reframe. Let's talk about digital currencies. I'm not talking about things like cryptocurrency, and there's problems in the crypto world for sure. There's a lot of stuff going on there. But I'm specifically talking about what is known as central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And as I mentioned earlier, 140 nations around the world have signed on to roll them out in the coming years. The US is testing them. Mexico is talking about it. Costa Rica is one of those nations as well. And this is that programmable money that I talked to you about earlier. Has anybody ever heard of the Bank of International Settlements? It's very obscure, so I'd be surprised. Okay, a couple people here. So the Bank of International Settlements is basically the international central bank of all the national central banks. So pretty much every nation in the world has a central bank. In the US, it's called the Federal Reserve, the Central Bank of England, things like that, right? So the Bank of International Settlements is sort of at the top of all that. And the head of the Bank of International Settlements in the last year or two has said that they want to be able to have programmable money so that they can make sure people are buying the right things. So they can make sure people are, living healthy. They're just looking out for us. I'm sure they're just benevolent people who have no other ill intentions. And so again, we get back to that picture where we think we're free and we have all these digital tools, but then eventually you kind of run into the digital prison walls and you realize like, oh my God, there actually are limits. I can't say this thing or I'm going to get banned on social media. And if I say it too much, they might shut down my PayPal account. And then if we get to CBDCs, it'll just be like a snap to turn your money off. And they could penalize you. Say for 30 days you have no access to this money. It'll give you a little slap on the wrist. It's like you're a child and they're trying to get you to act right. This is the ultimate paternalism from not only governments but from big tech. And the other aspect to this is to go cashless. You can't have a digital currency while there's still cash in existence, because people will probably continue to use cash while they have the opportunity. And especially, as I said, in places like Mexico, where it's just part of the culture and it's much more prevalent, it's much more easy for a lot of people. But it's being sold to us by groups like, let's name names. The United Nations, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and other groups that are saying we need to go out there and help these poor Indian farmers and these poor Mexican farmers and get them on the digital ID system and help them become banked and join the banking class. But as I said earlier, I believe that this is really just about getting more people who are not in their system right back in that system so they can be corralled like the rest of the developed world, the first world nations. And I think this is a very dangerous move, and I'll give you an example of why this could go wrong. Just one example, there are many more. I mentioned India earlier, the Aadhaar system foundation. So they went around scanning the retinas and the faces of over 1 billion Indian people. If you want to get welfare, which a lot of Indians are on, there's quite a poor cast of people there that are dependent on their welfare, they had to get the digital system. They had to be on Aadhaar. So they had to scan their face and show up. Well, there's some mainstream articles you can find about certain recipients of welfare who have died while waiting to get their welfare because they have to walk a mile to get there in some cases to get to the government building, and then they show up and they're in areas where there's not always electricity and power, right? But since things went digital and the guy shows up and he's like, hey, I'm here to collect my weekly ration, my check, whatever. Here's, scan my face, I'm ready, let's do it. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, our system's down. And okay, like here's a human. I can't do anything. The computer says no. It's going to take the humanity out of the relationship. And I think AI could do that as well. Like, let's say, for example, they've talked about AI policing, you guys seen those, I don't like calling them dogs, but that's what they call them, the robot dogs thing. You guys seen that around there? Well, China's got those strapped with guns and others, and they talk about putting AI in those. So imagine like dealing with an asshole cop. Imagine dealing with an AI that there's no humanity to even appeal to. Like, come on, man, like please, No, instead it's just an AI bot. Nope, you've already been targeted, let's go. Like, it could get really bad. Matrix, Terminator, you guys all seen the movies. And I'm not here to talk fear porn, we're all about solutions. But I just want you guys to really wrestle with what we're facing. And the reason I come to Envision, not only because it's a beautiful place and I'm so grateful for everybody here, but because I spent a lot of years doing other events with people who get this And I see that so many of you understand permaculture. You get like the need for spiritual healing. You get like a lot of the message. But I think there's also some big blind spots in our community. We all have blind spots. I'm not sitting up here like I'm perfect. And I think one of those areas is a blind embrace of technology and of just the latest thing that's on Instagram being sold to you or whatever else. Like, so I'm here to just say, like, let's stop, let's think, is this the world we really want? And if not, then maybe we should sit down with our journal and start thinking, okay, so I've got credit cards and I'm $30,000 in debt, I got student loan debt. What would it take to get free from that?
What would it take to get free of a banking system that is very quickly moving towards digital currency that could be turned off at a moment's notice? There are things like, I mentioned crypto earlier. I think Monero is still a valuable private cryptocurrency. In fact, the U.S. government has a bounty on it, still trying to see if they can crack the encryption on Monero. So I think that's one valuable tool, but also cash, of course. Cash is always valuable. Local currencies, new currents, creating new things. This is what my message is about, how to opt out of this technocratic digital prison and build new systems. I don't think the answers are going to come through politics. I know the answers aren't going to come through politics. And I don't believe violence is the answer. I don't think there's no central computer to smash and, oh, it's over, we won. It's not like that. Unfortunately, it's a bit more complex because, again, we are being willing participants in building this digital thing around us, the digital panopticon.
So then that means the power's in our hands. We get to decide, do we want to use Google? Do I want to download the new app that's going to track and trace me? Do I want to continue to fly after they force me to submit my face? I've pretty much kind of resigned myself that probably in the next 2 years I'm going to stop flying internationally if it means having to submit to facial recognition, because that is a line in the sand for me. And it might seem silly, but because my face print's probably been on Facebook and elsewhere, so it's not like the only place they can get is at the airport. You have a government ID and all these things. But the point is, if we don't actually protect our privacy and practice our principles, then we're just going to acquiesce them and we're going to walk right into a world where we have no say. And not only that, if you are a believer in the 7 generations, as I am and as we've been taught, we need to think about the world we're leaving for the next young ones that are going to come up. And as I said, I've got 6 nieces and nephews, 13 and under, who have very little understanding of the world prior to all this stuff, right? And the generations after them are going to have even less of an understanding, right? So I think it's on us, who are the conscious people paying attention, to think, what am I doing and how is it impacting my health, my privacy, my freedom? How is it going to impact those things in the future? And how can I make sure that I'm not leaving behind a digital prison for the coming generations? That's what I spend my days thinking about, and I want to throw a few more ideas to you guys. I want to tell you guys about, in my book, I talk about technocracy. Technocracy was a political philosophy in the 1930s, 40s, in the US and Canada that essentially believed that there should be, instead of politicians and instead of business people, there should be technicians or engineers should run society. And even though they didn't have the terminology at the time, they said there would be a central computer that would micromanage all of society and basically allocate, okay, this neighborhood needs this much food, this neighborhood, and it would be, they promised it would be a utopia, of course. And they were talking about this before we really knew what computers were, but if you put it in today's language, they would be describing a system where AI is essentially at the top, and that you put AI in charge, and the people running that are called the technocrats. We could also call these today's big tech CEOs, who all very much believe that technology, not governments, not the people, is what should guide the future. And think about when you have people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and others who have enough money plus access to social media with all sorts of information about us, they are in a very powerful position to guide and shape our actions if they want to. Those are technocrats. This philosophy, if you go look up the page on Wikipedia, it says it died down and it kind of faded into the dustbin of history. I actually believe this philosophy is guiding a lot of people today, that they still don't think we're smart enough to run our lives, and they don't think governments are the answer, and they don't think business is the answer. They think technology driven by the technocrats. And back in the day, the first iteration of this, they called it the technate, and the technocrat king would be at the top. I think this is the philosophy that is guiding groups like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and others, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, a lot of institutions that have been put in front of you and promoted as being there for positive use and positive things. Again, I think it's time to rethink and reframe if their intentions really are what they claim to be. And another thing I want to talk about, has anybody here struggled with meeting people locally? Because the big key to what I'm describing here, guys, is community. We can't survive through this alone. I believe the answer is opting out of their systems, building new parallel systems, and we have to come together on a local way and in a decentralized way so that we don't recreate the same problems of the past. And if you're going back to somewhere where you don't really feel like you have any local community, I want to invite you to check out a website called freedomcells.org, CELLS.org. This is like the cells in your body. Every cell is unique, individual, and powerful, but it's also part of this larger collective, which is you. And that's the idea with Freedom Cells. Since 2016, I've been a part of this movement, if you will, encouraging people to build a cell, and really the name is ultimately irrelevant. Call it a hub, hive, circle, pod, whatever the heck you want to call it. But you have a local group, and your goal is to bring together 8 to 10 people or so. We like to keep it sort of somewhat small because there's some good research on group size and group dynamics and effectiveness. But even if you got more than that, the point is that you get together with these people, you say, hey, what do we care about? Hey, we're all concerned about the future of food. We're concerned about privacy. You know, you get your concerns together and you say, okay, let's set some goals. What can the 8 of us accomplish in the next 6 months? Hey, well, how about we all agree to stop using Google? Let's all get an encrypted messaging app and let's start messaging each other through that. Let's all take a permaculture course together, or let's go start volunteering at a community garden. You're building this local resilience, this local strength in a decentralized fashion. And my friends, I'm happy to tell you, we've been doing this for 8 years now. There's over 42,000 people on the Freedom Cells website now from all around the world who have embraced this idea. And you'll go to the website. The cool thing about the website, and we're constantly updating it, it looks like a social network, but it is not meant to be a social network. This is not a place to post pictures of your cats or recipes or your favorite political opinions. In fact, the Freedom Cell movement is 5 things: apolitical, solutions-focused, nonviolent, localized, and decentralized. We don't believe politics is the answer, and we don't think there needs to be one person in charge. Instead, we think we all have skills to contribute. And if we come together in this decentralized way, as has been happening, it's become very popular in Australia, parts of India, the UK, of course, the US and Mexico. And it's just a way you go on there, you can create a profile. There's different tags you can put on your profile, like I'm looking for land, or I have land, I'm a permaculturist, I'm an artist, or whatever. And the main thing is, though, when you join, you can put your location. Do not give us your home address. We don't want your home address. Just put the park near somewhere where you need, the general area, right? And then you can search the member map and the cell maps and say, show me everybody within 20 miles, and there's all the people who have joined. Show me everybody within 10 miles who's into permaculture, and it'll show you people who have joined. And you can connect with them, look up their profile. Yeah, we have like-minded interests. Let's meet up for a coffee and see if we can put something together. Or you find out there's already a local group in your area and they're meeting every month. I'm going to go get plugged in with them. And there's the Freedom Cell Network is also very active on the Telegram app. If you're on Telegram and you just search Freedom Cell Network, go there, say hello, and we'll get you plugged. We have a whole directory of groups from all around the world. We don't create these groups. People just create them on their own. They get inspired. So if you go to the website or you go to Telegram and you're like, all right, there's nobody there, guess what? We nominate you to start the Freedom Cell in your community. And the more of us are doing this, the more of us they're creating these groups, whether it's under our banner or some other group, it doesn't matter. The idea of creating these localized, decentralized groups that are focused on solutions and asking questions like the ones I've been asking today, not just about this stuff, but anything. Like, what do we want to do as a local community? And the beautiful thing is, me and my partner Miriam, we traveled around the country during the COVID lockdowns. We spent 60 days traveling the US and connecting with Freedom Cells all around the country and Mexico. And we heard from plenty of people who were dealing with some pretty, what I would say, authoritarian practices, having to get permission slips to walk their dog and things like that. And people who were feeling very isolated and very alone. And through Freedom Cells, they found community. They found each other and they came together. Some people have now started homeschooling their kids through Freedom Cells. Some people have bought land together. Some people have just found more friends, and they felt like they were alone. And honestly, through all my years of journalism and activism, one of the things I heard the most is, I feel alone. I felt alone. But then once you come to a space like this or other spaces where you really find that authenticity, it changes everything. And we were able to give that to people during one of the darkest times in our recent history. And the movement's only growing. So I encourage you, if you are looking for community, you're looking to plug in, or if you got an organization, you want to collab, like, let's talk, reach out to me. I'm focused on solutions because we need them now more than ever. How long do I got? 5-ish? What time is it? Anybody know? 5 more minutes? Cool, perfect. Okay. So, this is really one of my main concerns. The book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, I encourage you guys to come pick one up. But as I mentioned, you can download it for free, theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. You can listen to the audiobook for free. It's available in Spanish. It's available in German. It's going to be available in Japanese this summer. And it's being translated to Dutch right now. And it's become an underground bestseller. I mean, I'm not on the New York Times list or anything, but it's definitely in there. I talk about this idea of exit and build. This is what I've been sharing with you guys. We're going to exit from slavery systems, and we're going to build new ones. And not all of us are the technologists and can build the digital tools of the future, but we can support those who are, right? So I'm kind of a spokesman for this. I don't know how to build the new systems we need in every area. I know about permaculture. I know how to build food systems. I know how to do those things, but I need the help of all of you brilliant people. And for us to come together and bring our skills together and say, what is the future really going to look like? Is it going to be a future that takes the best of technology and combines it with the best of this beautiful planet and the natural world? Or is it going to be a world that embraces digital technology to the end of our natural humanity? Because one of the things I want to end with is that some of the folks who have these beliefs and who are pushing this, they also have a transhumanist belief that I think is actually an anti-human ideology, and would like us to start putting chips in our brains and things like that. You own your body, you own your brain, you do whatever you want, but I would definitely be very skeptical of the people who are promoting things like this, especially when Neuralink killed a bunch of monkeys, in case you didn't know. But let's just rush on to human trials. So we need to think about that. We need to think about how we're going to embrace this technology and what it's going to look like. And I encourage you all to do so, whether it's through my work or whatever means you have. Sit with yourself. Think about, make a list of all the ways you feel you're plugged in and decide which ones, okay, I'm all right with that. I don't mind that. No, I think I need to work on this area, because I'm not here to tell you what steps to take. I'm just here to ask you to think about that and have that conversation with yourself. So I appreciate you guys' time so much. I'm going to end with my positive affirmation. You guys down for that? Make some noise, guys. Make some noise if you're alive, Envision. I appreciate y'all so much. Again, my website is theconsciousresistance.com. If you want to check out my documentaries, my articles, interviews, you can also find my 17-part documentary series at thepyramidofpower.net. And oh yeah, I just dropped a new song today, 33ishere.com. Check out that on all the usual places. So this is the affirmation I shared earlier. I used this when I went to prison, and it really did truly help me through some tough times when I was still learning self-love and doing a lot of healing. And I think it's just, to me, it sort of symbolizes like what we need. We need to recognize our own beauty. We need to recognize our own power. And then through that, see that we already are free. We just got to claim it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to you guys? We're already free beings. We come into this world as free beings, spiritually, physically, everything else. And the Creator put us here for a reason. We are made up of the soil. We're made up of the earth and the trees, the stars. Like, this is why we're here. You guys know that? Like, I feel, despite all the crazy shit I just shared with you guys, like, I'm so grateful I'm alive right now. Because what other time is there to be alive right now and to shape the future of where this shit's going? I would rather be this than to pass it on to my niece and nephews and the next generations. We are the ones that get to decide. And so it's up to each of you to decide what comes next. And I hope that together we can build something beautiful. So if you feel this, guys, repeat after me wherever you are in the jungle. I'm powerful. I'm beautiful. I'm free. Thank you guys so much.
One more time for Derrick Broze.